everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us on today's webinar, Putting Social Collaboration to Work in Services, brought to you by the Technology Services Industry Association and sponsored by ServiceMax. My name is Inga Entriago, your moderator for today. Before we get started, we have just a few housekeeping items. Audio is routed through your speakers. If you encounter audio quality or technical issues, let us know via the questions panel. You may access full screen view via the toggle button located at the top right area of the console. We encourage you to ask questions at any time via the questions panel. If you don't get to your question today, we will follow up with you via email. We do have one poll today, so as we roll that out, please be sure to join in. And finally, a link to the recorded version of the webinar and PDF of the presentation will be sent out in the next 24 hours via email. Once again, thank you for taking the time to join us. Our presenters today are John Ragsdale, VP of Technology and Social Research for TSIA, and Jeremy Frank, Director of Content Marketing for ServiceMax. We have a lot to cover in 30 minutes, so let's jump right in and get started by turning things over to our first presenter. John, over to you.
Thank you, Inga. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webcast. We're talking today about one of the hottest topics in technology and service operations today, social collaboration. And I've run into a few companies when I brought this topic up saying, yeah, we're not really interested in social media. So I want to start by saying, first of all, my topic and my content from today is being drawn from a new research report, which will be published by the end of the month about enterprise collaboration. And I think it's very important that we understand that collaboration tools are not about social media. They're actually a form of knowledge management. And in my view, it's really the third wave of knowledge management. If we think about the early days of building KM tools for service, back in the 80s, we have these expert systems. If you remember these decision trees that you would step through to try to get to the problem. In many ways, the theme of those tools was really automating to replace intelligence. It was almost like saying to the support technicians, we don't think you're quite bright enough to diagnose the issue, so we're going to give you these hard-coded, painful tools to navigate and get to the answer. We still see these expert systems used today, especially in customer self-service, like Dell showing you how to diagnose the problems on your own laptop. But in general, what we've moved to the next phase of knowledge management was, of course, the search-centric, which has been the predominant form since the mid to the late 1990s. And here the theme is really supplementing intelligence. So we know we've got smart people, but they can't possibly memorize every possible issue that can happen with a piece of hardware or software, so we give them a searchable knowledge base so they can find the answer. But as we're going to see on the next slide, there are a lot of gaps, and obviously the search-centric knowledge management approach is not meeting 100% of needs. The third wave is collaboration-centric, and this is absolutely the most direct way to get to content is to go straight to the expert. So real-time access to expertise represents collaboration, and that is, in my view, the current wave of knowledge management. So if we look at a couple of data points here from our recent knowledge management survey, we surveyed all of our members about their KM best practices in their operations. And interestingly, when people submit new content to the knowledge base, it takes on average 24 days, so more than 3 weeks to get it published. So that means that if that problem reoccurs during that 3-week time, of course, you're reinventing the wheel, trying to solve the problem. Another troubling statistic is the hit rate. Now, the hit rate is the percentage of issues from customers that are linked to existing problems in the knowledge base. In other words, you've got a knowledge base article to cover that problem. And currently, the average hit rate is around 43%, which means less than half of the problems that come into tech support and field support are covered by existing knowledge articles. The highest reported hit rate in the survey was 80%, which is really an impressive number. But even in that environment, it means 20% of customer issues have to be solved from scratch. So the main driver, in my opinion, for the huge uptake and the interest in collaboration is all about mobility and the fact that our field technicians are now armed with iPads or other mobile devices. Not only is this giving them instant access to their knowledge bases and any training tools, but when they don't have the answer and they can't find it in the corporate content, the collaboration tools allow them to immediately reach out to their peers, to other service techs, to a developer, and get the answer to the question. But without collaboration tools, the answer is, sorry, I can't fix it. I'll send another tech out tomorrow who knows what to do. So we're boosting first-time fix rates. We're reducing the time on-site to fix a problem. And essentially, collaboration is enabling every support technician or field technician to be an expert on every product. So our focus today is how do we overcome the barriers to adopting enterprise collaboration? And I think we've got to fairly admit that there are a few barriers along the way. And we've got an expert on that topic as our guest speaker today, but I want to tee up some of these barriers that I'm encountering working with TSIA members. First of all, obviously, you've got to have a collaborative culture, and I think it's very fair to say that some companies are very collaborative, other companies just have more of a closed culture that rewards individual expertise. So you're going to have to get your executives behind this initiative and supporting this initiative. Maybe they're not collaborating themselves, maybe their admins are doing it for them under their name, but you've got to see them visibly participating in collaboration. And as I always say when we're introducing new things in service, remember the carrot and the stick. We've got to make sure that some collaboration MBOs are on people's reviews, so when we go through their performance appraisal, we can either reward them for doing a great job or we can count them down if they're not participating like they should. Getting people to use the tools initially is always a bit of a challenge. Gamification is becoming a really popular way to get people to play with tools and understand how to leverage them. And our guest speaker today is going to talk about some gamification examples. Obviously, we're finding that younger folks are more inclined to social collaboration. I've got some data on that in that report I'm publishing. So probably your younger employees are going to gravitate to this, but your older folks may take a little additional coaching and mentoring. Whatever tool you're using for collaboration should have some kind of dashboard to let you know how many people are sending out messages and replying to messages, all of that collaboration activity. So make sure you know who your top collaborators are so you can reward them publicly, which is another great way to encourage participation. Finally, I'm the technology guy, so I'm starting to get more questions about these tools and how to get started. And while we do have a couple of large members who are implementing full online communities for employee collaboration, I think that the safest place to start is with a simpler tool, something like Yammer, or if you're familiar with Salesforce, more than half of our members now are using the Salesforce.com platform, and it has an embedded chatter tool, which is a really simple collaboration tool. It's what we use here at TSIA. And one of the advantages there is you want that collaboration technology embedded in the existing process and application flows your employees use. For example, Chatter being a part of Salesforce, anytime they log in to check a customer record or see where their next assignment is or to get customer history, they're going to see that Chatter information. So you don't have to log on to a separate collaboration tool or remember to check for collaboration messages several times a day. And my final piece of advice here is mobility is really enabling and driving a lot of the collaboration, particularly for field service. So when you roll out those mobile tools to your field staff, make sure they're trained on those tools, how to use them, make sure they know that they're there, because you want them to be able to leverage those to their very best advantage at working with customers. So before I bring in our guest speaker today, I'd like to do a quick polling question. So Inga, if you would, let's open up this polling question for our audience, and would like to ask you, Do you currently use a collaboration tool for your field technicians? And your options are, yes, we have a collaboration tool in place. No, we do not have a collaboration tool in place. And your third option is, we're planning to invest in collaboration in 2014. I know that more than half of our field service members had budget for collaboration tools in 2013-2014. My 2014 member technology survey that tracks adoption and spending is going out in just a couple of weeks. So we'll have some new 2014 data on collaboration adoption and spending coming very soon. So for now, I see it looks like most of the audience has voted. So let's go ahead and push those results out, Inga. And it appears that we're mixed, almost a third, and a third, but definitely the majority of respondents, 38-39%, do have a collaboration tool in place. And almost a quarter of you, 24-25%, are planning to invest in new or additional collaboration tools in 2014. So that's really great. It means only about a third of our audience is not active in collaboration. I'm sure you're on this webcast to find out more about it. So very happy to have you participate in that poll. And with that, I would like to introduce our guest speaker today. Jeremy Franks is the Director of Content Marketing for ServiceMax. He works with a lot of ServiceMax customers on introducing the concepts and the tools around collaboration. He's got some great customer examples from the real world to share with you today. So I'd like to turn things over to our guest speaker, Jeremy Franks. Jeremy, take it away.
Thanks, John. Hi, everyone. So my title obviously doesn't indicate this, but sort of a side project I've taken on here at ServiceMax, we're a field service management software company, is working with some of our customers to help them get adoption and find the value in social tools. It's something I feel really strongly about, and I especially think it lends itself so well to field service, where people are kind of out in the field on an island. So this presentation is kind of sharing some of the findings I've had working with customers, and also even including some of the things that we've found adopting tools within our own company, which I think has been applicable to a lot of our customers. So I wanted to start with a story about the cell phone, and the story may take place before this beautiful cell phone was released. But you know, there was a time when the cell phone was kind of a nice to have, and this sort of thing that was kind of cool and had a use here and there, and we kind of saw the value, but it wasn't necessarily adopted right away. It was more of a gimmick than something that actually provided value. You know, and I think we all remember the situation where we were in our house getting picked up by someone in their car, and they called us from the driveway from their cell phone. And we were like, I can't believe they just called me from their, you know, and now look at where we are now. You know, the cell phone has kind of gone through a similar, I think the parallel here is the phone has gone through a similar trajectory as social, in that social is becoming a far more ubiquitous thing that, you know, I know our company couldn't live without anymore. We're so invested in it. And I think a lot of companies are going that way. So I want to start here by talking about the value of social. I think this is something that's important to know and be able to communicate. And again, as John sort of said, we're talking about internal enterprise social here. So tools like Yammer and Chatter. We at ServiceMax have created a tool called Service Pulse that is built on top of Chatter, but essentially it's the same type of functionality. And I'll talk about each of these in a little more detail, but keeping track of what's important to you, exposing the collective knowledge of your entire organization to everybody, and making it searchable, and people being able to get the right answer to their questions from the right person. So the first one, keep track of what's important to you. So what you're seeing here is essentially the feed. So I think we're all familiar with feeds now with Twitter and Facebook, and you know, this is kind of the overlap there, is this idea of a feed. So what is in this feed is what is important to you. And I want to emphasize the word you, because you can decide what goes in this feed and what doesn't. So, I mean, you can see here a product is, you know, we have a product in this feed. We have people in this feed. There's all sorts of things that can come up in this feed. It can be, you can subscribe to accounts. You can subscribe to products. It's not just, you know, people. And that's an important thing, because your entire view of your business can take place within this feed. And some people even, one thing that actually I think, some people will often say, this is information overload. There's too much information in my feed. Well, one interesting thing to think about is you control everything that's in this feed, whereas your email inbox, anybody can send you anything at any time. So that's ability to kind of curate this is a really powerful thing. Next one is getting the right answer from the right person. And this is a specific example I'm going to give here to a technician, but there's lots of different use cases here. So imagine the technician out in the field, and he runs into an issue, this error 303 he's never seen before. Well, he goes on his social tool, his internal social tool, and can ask this question, not knowing even who might be the right person to answer that question. So anybody who's either following that product, following that person, or is maybe in a group around a certain topic can see this. And that can be product engineering, it can be support, it can be R&D, and all people who may be able to answer this question. And the technician then gets that answer from the right person and can solve the customer issue. And once that information has been put into the tool, it's there forever. And this is really powerful. John was talking about the next phase of knowledge management, and this really is that next phase. Instead of taking whatever John said, a few months to put something into a knowledge base, this just happened very organically. It was a conversation. The technician asked the question, say a product engineer gave the answer, and now the next time a engineer is out in the field trying to fix that problem, he can search the social tool that they're using and find that conversation, and the problem's been solved for him. So it's this kind of it's this knowledge base that's being built very organically and is very searchable, and that's a really powerful thing. So this is all well and good, but as you can kind of tell from the last few topics I spoke about, a lot of this is powered by how much people use it. And that is where, at least for a lot of our field service customers, the challenge really came. So how do you get this guy who's happy with his, late 90s, mid-90s cell phone and his pads of paper and stickies, and how do you get him to adopt social? Because ultimately that's going to make this powerful. So I have some tips that I want to get into that, again, are from working with customers and seeing what worked and what didn't. But, some of the challenges that you're going to see and that challenges that people are going to challenge you with, it's not going to happen overnight. This is just like rolling out anything at your company, software or otherwise. It takes a little bit of time for people to get on board, and that's okay. A lot of people are going to ask, why not just use email? Why do I need this other tool? Email kind of works fine. Another challenge is that it's information overload. I talked about this a little bit, but I already have a cell phone. I already have email. I'm already on all these other social networks. It's information overload. A lot of people will challenge you by saying, these old guys won't use it. Yeah, we'll get the 20-somethings on it, but nobody else is going to use it. And then lastly, getting started can be daunting. A lot of people come in you asking, what's the value here? Why am I going to use this? And so getting started can be a little bit of a daunting thing. But hopefully these next few tips will help you overcome some of these. First one is to base a key process or area of interest within the social tool that you're using. So what do I mean by this? I'm going to give an example from my company, and I'm also going to give an example from one of our customers. The example from my company is that our product team started a group called the Product Wall. And they basically told everybody that if you ever want information about what's coming in our product, when we're releasing stuff, you have to go into this group because that's where it's going to be. We're not going to email it to the company, and it's all going to have to be found within this group. So all of a sudden, hundreds of people started, well, over 100 people, we're not that big of a company, started joining this group. And it became kind of the group that got people really engaged with our social tool because they were forced to go in there to get this information. And an interesting example from a customer, one of our medical device customers that has service updates that come out for their products periodically decided that they were going to post those service updates uniquely within Chatter so that was where the service engineers had to go find them. And, on the surface, that sounds a little bit risky. What if people aren't engaged on that? But they actually found that people weren't really engaging with these service updates on email, so they wanted to try this and see if it worked better, and it did. And one of the interesting things that came of it was that engineers were now able to comment and ask questions about these service updates, like, hey, I didn't really get what you meant by this in this new service update. Can you explain that? A product engineer or a support person would get on and clarify things, and there was now this string of conversation, and that was a really powerful thing for them. Next is groups and field tracking. So I can't emphasize the importance of groups enough. So there's the idea of following people within a social tool, but following a group is usually a topical thing. So here I have an example of, San Francisco technicians. They all maybe want to set up a group because they have some unique things to them that they want to communicate about. But there can also be a group about, a new product, say. So you may not be following every single person that posts in that group, but you want to know everything that happens, or that all the discussions happening around that specific topic. And that helps to mitigate too much noise in your feed and keeps things focused on what you're interested in. The other thing, field tracking, is basically a fancy word for tracking things that are happening within, say, your Salesforce org, actual actions that are being taken. So it's not necessarily somebody posting within the social tool or in Chatter. It's somebody changing the status of a work order. You want to know about that work order because it's at a very important client. You need to know the minute it's been closed, so you subscribe to that work order and you get updates when things happen. So when I was talking earlier about the feed having everything that's important to you, that's some of what I was referring to. Next, be able to communicate the value. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but a lot of people are going to ask you, why should I do this? What's the value? And these are the three things that I've come up with, but there's going to be lots of others for you specific to your company, but be prepared to share that. Come up with a little bit of messaging for that. Number 4, have patience and stay active. Like I said, it's not an overnight thing. You and the champions that start this are going to be, alone at the party for a little while. It can feel a little bit sad, but the party will pick up. I guarantee it, as long as you have a little bit of perseverance. This is a post that I did back when we were kind of getting up and running at our company, and it didn't get a lot of response there, but you just power through, stay patient, stay active, things will happen. And tip number 5, John talked about a little bit, and this, if you're going to come away with one thing from this presentation, this is it. And that's getting executives active at your company and getting some high-up champions to really stay active. This is our CEO at ServiceMax. This post got tons of likes, got a bunch of comments after this. It's really an important thing to get, if not the CEO, other really high-up people involved. It shows that this is something the company's serious about. It shows that this is part of the culture of the company. And also, people can see that the CEO is watching or that the VP of service is watching. And for a lot of people, that is motivation to get in there and be active. So I highly, highly recommend this as being the #1 tip to start with. And the last tip is actually a bonus tip, and it's to not be afraid of the unknown. These tools can kind of take on a life of their own, and that scares a lot of people. But we're all professionals here. Maybe someone will post about their lunch at some point. Oh, big deal. But these will take on a life of their own, and it can often be a really, really good thing. These are a couple instances of groups that were created here at ServiceMax. That Know Thy Neighbor is the first one. That was kind of a group to help people get to know each other. And the one in the front, Friends Don't Let Friends Drink K-Cups, was kind of a joke group created by some coffee snobs here who wanted to get rid of our K-Cup machine and get a real coffee machine. So, it's fun. It's cultural stuff. And honestly, this can often be what brings people back into the community, into the social tool, knowing that they have this group that they think is fun and engaging, and getting people back into the tool can be one of the challenges to adoption, and something like this can be a big help there. So that's it for me. I'm happy to answer some questions. This is, like I said in the beginning, I think field service is one of the areas that can really benefit from this social phenomenon. Mainly because a lot of the people are remote and aren't in the office like the vast majority of people at your company. So So anyway, with that, thank you very much, and I think we're going to answer some questions, so I'll kick it back over to Inga.
Thank you very much, Jeremy, for a very, very informative webinar. And yes, we are going into the Q&A portion. First question is for John. Should we be investing in collaboration instead of knowledge bases?
Well, ideally, you're investing in both, but my experience and my data shows that about 95% of service operations already have a knowledge base. So if you're, I know companies that are on their third or fourth knowledge base in 10 or 12 years, and if that's the case, then I would consider getting a good search tool for your old knowledge base and definitely investing in collaboration. I think especially with the break-fix nature of on-site service, we've got to all get better with collaboration, and I think that you're going to find that once we get live on this, you're going to see the ROI results as good or better than we have with knowledge bases in the past.
Great, thank you so much, John. We do have another question. This is for Jeremy. Jeremy, how does the chatter-driven system capture and rank quality content? How is it discoverable?
Yeah, that's a great question. It doesn't, at least as far as I know at this point, the tools don't necessarily have quite the sophistication of like your Facebook feed, which there's a lot of algorithmic stuff going on behind the scenes to present certain content to you. I think at this point the answer I have to that question is you as the user are able to curate the content. That you want to see. So make it manageable so you can digest most of it. I'm not familiar with a way to sort of make things rise to the top other than setting alerts. So there is a capability I know in Chatter to set alerts, email alerts. For certain groups, you can say, I want an email alert every time someone posts, or I want an email alert every time I'm mentioned. There's certain ways to do that alert type thing, which I think can sort of get to what you're referring to there.
Great. Thank you so much for that, for elaborating on that. That was a really, really good question. We do have time for one more question, and this is for, this is for Jeremy, and then John, if you want to elaborate on this as well. If you don't have a knowledge base, should you leapfrog to the social collaboration tool?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. So I know this is specific to Chatter and Salesforce. I'm not sure about some of the others, but one of the interesting things here is that with Chatter, you're given a certain amount of hard space to post files and stuff. I think you can actually each post can be up to like 2 gigabytes or something, so quite a bit of space there. So without buying a knowledge base, you can base a lot of your knowledge within Chatter, and we actually do that here at ServiceMax. We have groups that are specific to certain things. Say analyst reports that we want to archive. We have like an analyst group, and that's where we post all that content. We have a professional services group where they post a lot of their content, files, and various things. So we actually do use this as our knowledge base because you are provided with quite a bit of space, and then that stuff is searchable within our Salesforce instance too. So within Chatter and within Salesforce.
Inga, if I could chime in on that, I would say that remember that collaboration is about solving the problem that's immediately in front of you. Knowledge management is about capturing that information to solve the problem when it happens again in the future. So I would say embrace collaboration and get the customer running, and then the process should also include documenting that to make sure if it happens again, you know what to do. If you've set up your collaboration tool as Jeremy's been talking about they're doing with Chatter, that's great. If you've got a knowledge base or a SharePoint system you're throwing content in, go ahead and throw it in there. But make sure that once you've closed out and resolved the issue, that someplace you're capturing what to do in the future so we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Great. Thank you so much, John. We are at the end of our webinar today. I want to thank Jeremy and John for a very, very insightful and informative webinar today. And just a quick reminder, the recording and the PDF version of today's presentation will be sent out within 24 hours after the conclusion of today's webinar. And any questions that we didn't get to today, we will be sure to follow up with you via email. Again, thank you everyone for attending today's webinar, and have a wonderful day.